Imagine for a moment a basement in the Swiss Alps. Quiet. Safe. Where nameless gold bars rest alongside suitcases stuffed with cash. Now imagine that in this same vault, separated only by a few steel shelves, lie the treasures of a Nazi officer, the embezzled savings of a tropical dictator, the profits of a drug cartel, and the discreet investments of respectable bankers. It sounds like fiction, doesn't it? But that's exactly what happened for decades in the heart of Europe. Switzerland, with its almost sacred neutrality and banking secrecy laws stricter than a vault, has become the largest money laundering facility in the modern world. A machine for laundering criminal fortunes that operated for almost a century. And the question that remains is simple. How did a country known for the precision of its clocks and the purity of its mountains end up timing the most heinous crimes in history? How did the land of Swiss chocolate leave such a bitter taste in humanity's mouth? To understand this metamorphosis, we need to go back to 1934. Europe was seething with political tension, and Switzerland, pressured by a tax evasion scandal involving prominent French figures, made a decision that would change its history forever. They created what they called the duty of absolute silence, a law that made any leak of banking information a crime. It was as if they had built an invisible wall around every bank account, protected not just by steel vaults, but by an impenetrable legal shield. The timing could not have been more perverse. While Swiss politicians were signing this law, across the border, a frustrated Austrian painter was beginning his rise to power. Adolf Hitler and his followers would soon discover they had been given the perfect gift, a banking system that promised to guard secrets like a tomb. And so began the first major money laundering operation of the modern era, led by the very architects of absolute evil. During World War II, as Europe bled, Swiss banks were abuzz with a different kind of activity. It wasn't just numbers on spreadsheets, it was gold ripped from the teeth of Holocaust victims, works of art stolen from bombed-out museums, and securities looted from occupied central banks. The Swiss National Bank received some $440 million in Nazi gold. More than half of it was theft, pure and simple. It was as if the Alps had become a gigantic receiving operation, where every gold ingot carried with it the blood and tears of millions of innocent people. What made it all even more cruel was the bureaucratic coldness that followed. When the war ended and families of Jewish victims sought to recover the savings they had deposited in Switzerland for safety, the banks simply closed their doors. They demanded death certificates issued by the Nazis themselves. It was like asking the ashes to sign their own cremation certificate. Decades passed before international pressure forced any redress. And even then, many banks attempted to pay only half of what they owed, citing administrative error, as if the extermination of 6 million people were a spreadsheet error. But the Nazis were only the first act of this dark symphony. With the end of World War II and the beginning of the Cold War, a new cast of villains discovered the Swiss stage. This time, they were not uniformed soldiers, but dictators in suits and ties who plundered entire nations while their people died of hunger and oppression. Ferdinand Marcos turned the Philippines into his personal safe, embezzling so much money that his wife, Imelda, managed to amass 1,000 pairs of shoes with public funds. When he was overthrown in 1986, he tried to withdraw a large sum from his Swiss account, but this time the bank hesitated. It was the first sign that the winds were changing. Haiti, Zaire, Nigeria, every country that made headlines for military coups or brutal dictatorships soon found its financial counterpart in the banks of Geneva and Zurich. Jean-Claude Duvalier emptied Haiti, one of the poorest countries in the world, and fled with suitcases full of cash to Switzerland. Mobutu Sese Seko turned the Congo into his private property, embezzling billions while his people died from diseases that cost pennies to cure. Sani Abacha stole between $1 and $5 billion in Nigerian oil revenues. Money that could have transformed the lives of millions. The irony was brutal. While entire peoples suffered under the boot of these tyrants, the stolen money rested peacefully in the Alps, earning interest and financing the luxury of retired genocidal thugs. It was as if every Swiss franc deposited carried with it the echo of the muffled screams of a murdered democracy. And the bankers? Well, they preferred not to ask questions. It was more profitable that way. Parallel to this gallery of political horrors, another type of criminality discovered the Alpine paradise: international organized crime. The 1,972nd and 980 seconds brought with them the explosion of global drug trafficking. Colombian cartels, European mafias, Chinese triads all needed to launder mountains of dirty money. And where better than in the country that had perfected the art of profitable silence? In 1994, Swiss authorities made a discovery that shocked even the most cynical observers. An account at the Union Bank of Switzerland held $150 million belonging to the Medellin cartel. These were the direct profits of Pablo Escobar's empire, the man who transformed cocaine into one of the most valuable commodities on the planet. For a full decade, that money sat there, earning interest, while Escobar financed a civil war in Colombia that killed tens of thousands of people. The bankers claimed they couldn't see the criminal origins of the funds. It was like claiming they couldn't smell gunpowder on a battlefield. Each of these revelations opened a window onto the same disturbing reality. In the dungeons of Swiss banks, bloodthirsty dictators, drug traffickers, and genocidal perpetrators shared the same space, united by the gilded complicity of banking secrecy. It was a kind of exclusive club of evil, where the only entry required was sufficient money and a non-existent conscience. But every farce has its end, and the 20th century was approaching its close, bearing the weight of its own contradictions. International pressure began to grow. Families of Holocaust victims sued Swiss banks. Countries plundered by dictators demanded the return of their national treasures. American investigators uncovered thousands of millionaires hiding money in Switzerland to evade taxes. The golden silence began to crack like melting ice. The year 2007 brought a figure who would change everything: Bradley Birkenfeld, a former UBS banker who decided to break the code of silence. He turned informant and detailed exactly how he helped American clients evade the tax authorities with secret numbered accounts. It was as if someone had finally turned on the light in that dark basement in the Alps. The scandal resulted in billion-dollar fines for Swiss banks and forced the country to relax its banking secrecy laws for the first time in decades. Still, the ghosts continue to haunt. In 2022, the Swiss Secrets Project exposed data from 18,000 Credit Suisse accounts, revealing links to clients involved in torture, drug trafficking, and corruption. It was a reminder that the Swiss laundromat hadn't completely closed its doors. It had simply become more selective about who it let in. Today, when we look back and try to understand how all this was possible, the answer is both simple and terrifying. Switzerland discovered that neutrality and profit could go hand in hand, even when it meant serving humanity's worst demons. For decades, the country built its prosperity on a foundation of blood-stained gold, stolen art, and orphans' tears. The Swiss culture of "ask not where it came from, as long as it comes from," financed an enviable standard of living, but at what cost? Every work of art in Zurich's galleries could have been ripped from the walls of a deported Jewish family. Every gold ingot in Geneva's vaults could have been forged from the personal belongings of Holocaust victims. Every Swiss franc invested in infrastructure could have originated from the sweat and blood of people oppressed by dictators who hoarded their treasures in the Alps. The most disturbing thing of all is realizing that we're not talking about ancient history. Trillions of dollars still circulate through the Swiss banking system, protected by laws that, although reformed, still maintain veils of secrecy over fortunes of dubious origin. The difference is that now there is greater surveillance, more public pressure, and international agreements that mandate at least some transparency. Deposed dictators see their millions frozen in a matter of hours, as happened with Hosni Mubarak in 2011. But the big question remains: have we changed enough? Or have we simply learned to be more discreet about our complicity in evil? Switzerland still ranks among the most secretive tax havens in the world. New scandals continue to erupt regularly. The money laundering machine may have lost some of its efficiency, but it hasn't completely stopped working. It's ironic to think that a country known for the extreme precision of its clocks has timed humanity's worst crimes with such precision. May the land famous for the purity of its alpine waters become the river where dictators, drug traffickers, and genocidal perpetrators washed away their guilt. May the masters of neutrality have systematically chosen the side of money over the side of justice. Remember that imaginary basement we described at the beginning? That silent vault in the Alps where nameless gold bars rested alongside suitcases stuffed with cash? That space where Nazi officials, tropical dictators, drug lords, and respectable bankers shared the same steel shelves? It wasn't fiction, it was real, and in many ways, it's still island. The difference is that now we know that vault exists. We know that behind Swiss neutrality, there have always been very clear choices about who to serve and protect. We know that Switzerland's invisible gold shone with the reflection of human suffering. And we know that every time we close our eyes to the origins of the money circulating through global financial systems, we risk becoming complicit in the next tragedy. Switzerland may be trying to cleanse its household silver, but the stain remains. And perhaps that is necessary. Perhaps it is important that we continue to see that dark stain in the heart of Europe as a constant reminder that unprincipled neutrality is just another name for profitable complicity. That banking silence can be the amplified echo of muffled screams. And that, ultimately, every safe has its key, you just have to be brave enough to use it.